In the early morning hours of July 18, 2023, a desperate call came through to Charlotte Emergency Services. A woman's voice, trembling and breathless, told the operator she'd just fired a weapon at someone in her home.
Charlotte 911, do you need police, fire, or medic?
I need a police. Somebody just been shot in my house. I came home and I had a woman in my house, and I pulled out my gun and I shot, and she's not moving.
Okay, how old is she?
I have no idea. I don't even know the woman. She's inside my house in the hallway on the floor.
Is she flat on her back?
No, she's on her stomach. I can try to move her on her back. My husband told me don't touch her. Oh God, what did I do? What did I do?
But this wasn't an intruder caught breaking and entering. The person bleeding on that hallway floor was a 25-year-old woman who'd been brought there by the caller's own husband. What unfolded that night in a modest neighborhood on Porter Street would expose a web of deception, a marriage falling apart, and a young life caught in the crossfire.
I'm angry, I'm upset that for her to go from one emotion to the next, you get on the 911 call and I have a call recorded on my phone where you're beating my child, and then you call 911 and you're emotionally crying and saying your life is over. I feel like...
This is the story of Tyra Crosby, a woman who walked into a situation she never could have anticipated and paid the ultimate price for someone else's lies. Tyra Chanel Crosby entered this world on August 28, 1997. She grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, raised by her mother, Tanya Hoskins. Those who crossed paths with Tyra remembered her warmth, her energy.
She wouldn't want us to be sad out here. She was the light of every situation, you know what I'm saying? Your head down, she gonna make sure you lift it up, you know.
She had faith, praying regularly, and she carried dreams that stretched far beyond her current circumstances. Like many young people finding their way, Tyra's journey hadn't been without stumbles. Between 2018 and 2023, she faced legal troubles, serious charges that marked difficult chapters in her story. But according to everyone who knew her well, she was actively working to leave those mistakes behind. She wanted better for herself, and she was taking steps to get there. In the months leading up to that July morning, Tyra had been in a relationship. Her social media showed glimpses of that connection, those playful videos couples post together.
Who's the better cook? Who said I love you first? Who takes longer to get ready in the morning? Who's the grumpier one in the morning?
There was laughter in those clips. There was affection. She seemed content with someone who cared for her, someone she cared about in return. On the night of July 17, 2023, Tyra went out. Her mother wasn't entirely certain where, though reports suggested it was likely a nightclub or perhaps one of those arcade sweepstakes establishments along Freedom Drive. Somewhere during that evening, Tyra encountered a man named Albert Alexander. He was 50 years old, more than twice her age. Somehow they connected. They talked, they drank. They spent hours together in that atmosphere of music and casual conversation. Now here's where things get complicated. Tyra had a boyfriend, someone she'd been publicly involved with. So what was she doing out that night with Albert? Perhaps she viewed it as harmless fun, just meeting someone new without any serious intentions. Maybe she thought nothing of sharing a few drinks and some conversation. Whatever her reasoning, that evening Tyra crossed paths with Albert Alexander, and the hours slipped by as they grew comfortable with each other. At some point, Albert made his proposition. He invited Tyra back to his place. She accepted, thinking she was simply going home with an available man. She had absolutely no idea about the reality of Albert's situation. She didn't know about the wife waiting somewhere in the background of his life. She didn't know that the house he was taking her to wasn't truly his alone. Around 5 in the morning, as the night melted into dawn, someone else arrived at that house, and Tyra's world came crashing down in the worst way imaginable. When Charlotte-Mecklenburg police officers arrived at Porter Street just after 5:21 that morning, they found Tyra Crosby lying motionless on the floor. She'd been shot. Paramedics tried to assess the situation, but there was nothing they could do. Tyra was pronounced deceased at the scene, her life ending in the hallway of a house she'd never been to before that night. The emergency call had come from 51-year-old Stephanie Alexander, the wife of the man who'd brought Tyra there. Stephanie worked in healthcare, holding certifications that included CPR training. She was the kind of person who juggled demanding work schedules, taking care of responsibilities, putting in long shifts to make ends meet. She and Albert had been married for years, though their living arrangement raised questions. Stephanie had 5 children from a previous relationship, and Albert had stepped into a stepfather role for all of them. But here's where things get murky. Public records showed Albert listed at a completely different address, an apartment on Julian Avenue. Stephanie's name was attached to the Porter Street house where everything went down. Were they separated but still legally married? Living apart while maintaining some version of their relationship? Nobody seemed to have clear answers. There were even whispers about another woman in Albert's life, someone reportedly named Patricia. To anyone looking at Albert's situation from the outside, it was nearly impossible to tell if he was married, single, or somewhere in between. That ambiguity made it easy for Albert to lie. When he met Tyra that night, how difficult would it have been for him to present himself as an unattached man simply enjoying a night out? How hard would it have been to hide the truth about Stephanie, about their marriage, about the complications of his actual life? When Albert brought Tyra home that morning, he didn't take her to his apartment on Julian Avenue. He took her directly to Porter Street, to the house where Stephanie lived. And Stephanie hadn't been there because she'd been at work. Her job was roughly 26 minutes away from the house. According to her later statements, she came home early that morning because she needed to retrieve a computer for a class assignment. She pulled up to the house, walked through the door and discovered Tyra there with her husband. What happened in the following minutes escalated with terrifying speed. Stephanie later told investigators she noticed clothing draped over the couch. She called out, asking who was in the house. When no one responded, she grabbed her gun. Her husband allegedly tried to wrestle the weapon away from her, attempting to defuse the situation before it spiraled completely out of control. But when Stephanie saw the bathroom door opening, she fired. She would later claim she thought she was aiming at the wall, that she wasn't actually trying to hit anyone. That fear overtook her judgment. But Tyra's family tells a different story, one that paints a far more disturbing picture of those final moments. Tanya Hoskins, Tyra's mother, revealed that her daughter had tried calling her that morning. When Tanya didn't answer, the call rolled to voicemail. What that voicemail captured was 8 minutes long. According to Tanya, those 8 minutes recorded her daughter's final moments on Earth. She stated that the recording captured Tyra being attacked, that you could hear both Stephanie and Albert, that their voices were unmistakable in the audio. Tanya immediately handed that voicemail over to Charlotte Mecklenburg police, believing it contained crucial evidence about what really happened before that emergency call.
She even said to the 911 caller that there was an intruder. Your husband brought her there. You knew she wasn't an intruder at that time, at that point of time. He knew that him and his wife shared that home together. My daughter was innocent in it.
Stephanie Alexander was taken into custody that morning. She was arrested, formally charged and booked into Mecklenburg County Jail around 6 in the morning. Her bond was set at $250,000. By 2 that afternoon, Stephanie had already posted bond and walked free.
She murdered my daughter at 5 a.m. and she was out at 8 p.m. So that means that human life means nothing anymore.
Meanwhile, Albert Alexander sat down with police as a witness. He answered their questions, gave his account of what happened, and then left. He was never charged with anything. No arrest, no consequences, nothing. That's when Tanya Hoskins decided she couldn't stay silent. She spoke publicly about what she believed really happened. Tanya believed Albert knew exactly what he was doing, that he understood his wife's work schedule, when she'd be gone, when she might return. In Tanya's eyes, her daughter had been lured into a trap. The Porter Street neighborhood struggled to process what had happened. 5 days after Tyra's death, on July 23, 2023, family and friends gathered at Camp Green Park in Charlotte for a candlelight vigil. People came out to remember Tyra, to celebrate the person she'd been. They lit candles against the evening darkness. They released balloons into the sky. They shared stories and memories. The following day, July 24th, Tyra was laid to rest. The funeral took place at Greater Temple Baptist Church in Charlotte. Her family came. Her friends came. Her boyfriend came, the man she'd been sharing her life with, the one who appeared in those videos with her. He had to grapple with the devastating reality that the woman he loved was gone, and that she'd died at another man's house. Tanya refused to let this fade away. She kept pressure on prosecutors and police. She wanted those charges elevated. She felt voluntary manslaughter was far too lenient for what had happened to her daughter. She pushed for first-degree murder charges, frustrated that Stephanie had been released so quickly after taking her daughter's life. On August 3, 2023, the Mecklenburg County Grand Jury convened to hear the case. They reviewed all the evidence, including that voicemail recording. After their deliberations, they returned an indictment for second-degree murder against Stephanie Alexander. The charges had been upgraded, though not to the extent Tanya had hoped for. As the case moved through the legal system, questions multiplied. Why wasn't Albert facing any charges? If that voicemail truly captured both of them attacking Tyra, why was he walking around free? He'd been right there when it happened. His voice was allegedly on that recording. Some speculated that prosecutors simply didn't have enough evidence to charge him beyond reasonable doubt. Others wondered if the couple's ambiguous living situation played a role. Were they actually separated? Had Albert brought Tyra there deliberately, knowing what might happen? Some people believed Albert orchestrated the entire situation, that he was tired of his marriage and intentionally brought Tyra to that house at that specific time, knowing Stephanie might come home. When you consider how bold he was, taking Tyra to a house he knew his wife had access to, it raises serious questions about his intentions. The case languished in the court system for over a year. Then, in December 2024, a court date was finally set. On December 5, 2024, Stephanie Alexander stood before a judge in Mecklenburg County Court. But instead of facing trial for second-degree murder, she entered a guilty plea to voluntary manslaughter. In court, testimony revealed Stephanie's version of events. Before sentencing, the court allowed testimony from Tyra's family. They had the opportunity to speak directly to the judge, to explain what this loss meant, to make certain Stephanie understood the magnitude of what she'd done. Stephanie offered an apology to Tyra's family, expressing remorse for the events that unfolded that morning. Then came an unexpected moment. A physical altercation broke out in the courtroom between Albert and one of Tyra's family members. Multiple deputies had to intervene to restore order. The judge handed down the sentence, 60 to 84 months in prison. That translates to 5 to 7 years behind bars. Tanya was devastated. She'd fought for over a year to secure justice for her daughter. In the end, Stephanie would serve a handful of years, and then she'd be free to rebuild her life. Albert faced nothing. No charges, no prison time, no consequences whatsoever. He'd been interviewed as a witness, and that was the extent of his involvement with the legal system. The man who lied to Tyra, who brought her into an incredibly dangerous situation, who set this entire chain of events in motion, gets to continue his life as if nothing happened. Tyra had her entire life stretching out ahead of her. She had someone who loved her. She was actively working to move past her mistakes and build something better. One night out, one encounter with the wrong man, ended all of that. Stephanie Alexander is currently serving her sentence in prison. She'll be eligible for release sometime between 2028 and 2030. If there's anything to take from Tyra's story, it's the reminder to be careful about who we trust, to pay attention to warning signs, to ask questions when something doesn't feel right. It's also a reminder about the ripple effects of violence, how one terrible decision in a moment of rage doesn't just end one life but damages everyone connected to that person.